What's up, guys? So, put up a post earlier in the week about what it takes to become a diag tech. For me, the biggest thing has always been mindset. The mindset to not get beat, the mindset to push through the trouble, the mindset to overcome the obstacles that are put in our way. And there are a lot of obstacles, especially in the independent world. Service info is locked into the tools in a lot of cases now. A lot of the tests that we used to be able to do bidirectionally don't exist without OE software, OE tooling. Some cases that's not a big deal. Some cases that is a monumental challenge to overcome. Mercedes and Porsche are two that spring to mind immediately. The cost of getting OE equipment is extreme. Being able to work around some of that stuff, put a SOD request in, support on demand request, and get somebody on the other end of the vehicle who can walk you through some of this stuff. I am not afraid at all to use SOD. Those guys that are doing that are very good at what they do. Obviously, there's some that aren't. It's a mixed bag. I've had some really terrible experiences. For the most part, I've had really, really good experiences with SOD services, SOD sessions, but I still like to have the stuff to be able to do it myself, so I'm not reliant on somebody. Part of that's probably a little bit of a character flaw because I have spent insane amounts of money on stuff that really should be shop equipment, but having to send a car to the dealer is the most insulting thing. Personally, I take that as an insult. I'm not going to mention Dutch's name, but I know there's a few other guys in the room that feel the same way. If you got to send something out, that's a failure. And that's a personal thing. That is an ego thing. I'm not going to say anything other than that. That is 100% an ego thing. I don't like getting beat. I like even less when I can't find an answer. I think that tenacity and that stubbornness is a big part of being a diag guy. You've got to be able to power through. You have to. Another big thing with, that tenacity is being able to apply that drive, that stubbornness, apply it in a meaningful and usable way. The biggest single thing other than mindset is you have to put the time in. There's no way around it. Experience is absolutely required. You can learn the basics of electrical systems, electronics, but you cannot replace experience. You just can't. There is no amount of training in the world that surpasses experience, and that requires time. I'm 29 years into my career. Wow, I'm getting old. Of that 29 years, I would say close to 20 of them have been focused very heavily on troubleshooting and evaluating. That didn't come light. The cost for that was extremely high. I gave up a lot of time with my family. I gave up a lot of personal wellness time, I guess, interests that I have, hobbies that I have. I gave them up in the interest of forwarding my career. I was so driven to be that guy, to be the guy that people went to with a problem, and I wanted it so bad. And now I'm there, and God, I just want to hang brakes. I can't say that. I really do enjoy my job. I enjoy the challenge. I enjoy the curveballs. I enjoy the constant learning. Teaching's a big part of it too, in my opinion. Knowledge is useless if you gatekeep it and don't share it. Do I know everything? No. Anybody who says they do, I have a couple bridges that are for sale. Nobody knows all of this. You get to a certain point where I think you start having to focus on specific areas, be it a brand, be it a specific technology. You almost have to. Things are getting so complex and so integrated, and there's so much variation. You can't be an expert in everything. You can be pretty good in a lot of them. The biggest skill that I think a lot of guys lack is research and critical thinking. If you can look at something and make sense of it, or it doesn't make sense, figure out what medium or what form of delivery you need to make it make sense. That's one of the things that this industry loves trouble trees. It loves pattern testing. And in a lot of cases, you can do that. Paul Danner is a master at that. Global testing techniques that work regardless of what it is. If it is a Geo Metro or a 747, his testing methods will work. I don't know that many of us have that breadth of vehicles coming into the shop, but if we do, more power to you. But, electrical is electrical, whether it's on an aircraft, a submarine, a vehicle, a space shuttle, it doesn't matter. Electrical is electrical. A Hall effect is a Hall effect. A variable reluctance is variable reluctance. A thermistor is a thermistor. It doesn't matter. What matters is what signals are getting to the ECU or whichever module it is, and how they're interpreted and what the ECU does with that information, right? That's where we have to be able to interpret, read, research, and know how to look this stuff up. A lot of that does come from time being experience. There's a lot of nuance in what we do. Looking at a BMW or looking at a Chevy or looking at a Volvo or looking at a Subaru, the electrical operation of things is the same. The application and use of those signals to change things is not, but being able to interpret that, understand that. And there's so much to understand and there's so much to grasp and comprehend and retain. It's overwhelming. Anybody can follow a trouble tree and probably get to the result. Not always, but probably. Not everybody can freely think and figure out how to bypass half of that trouble tree in 1 or 2 tests. And they're valid tests. I challenge any engineer to show me why that test is invalid. Load testing a power and ground circuit is an entirely valid test, and it eliminates probably 8 steps in a trouble tree between resistance testing, connector inspection, all of that stuff. It eliminates it all in one shot. How is that not valid? I just load tested the circuit. Now I know I can pass current, so everything downstream of that has to be good. I have modular component failure. How do you figure that out? Verification. Verification of testing. Not only verification of the problem, but verifying that your testing method is accurate. Developing your own stuff can be hugely beneficial, but it has to be done with a very high degree of discipline because you can't shortcut some things. Lots of guys will try. Lots of guys have tried. I've tried it. I thought I was doing a really good job, and it turns out I was not. So there's a lot of knowledge that is required. And that knowledge only comes through time, experience, tenacity, stubbornness, methodology, consistency. Being consistent with your testing every failure the same way. There are so many things, but at the end of the day, you've got to be patient. You have to be willing to put in the time. You have to be willing to take the criticism, learn from the failures, look at them as learning opportunities. I beat that into my guys. I'll set up stuff for them to test, show them how to test it, then break everything down, put it away, and let them set it up. I've explained it. Now I've shown them. Now I've given them the visual cues to what's right, what's not. This is what it should feel like. If it feels like this, that's wrong. That's going to give you a bad result. Not a bad test, a bad result. There's, being the diag guy there's a lot of pressure. There is an immense amount of stress. There is an immense amount of expectation. We're the guys that keep all the problems moving through the shop. If we're not able to do that, then we're not very effective at what we do. But at the end of the day, you have got to have the mindset to be able to push through and power through all of that and be able to make it work and be effective doing it. There's a lot of expectation, but the satisfaction and the reward is huge. Take care, guys. We'll see you next round.